What if the greatest battle in history wasn't fought with swords or armies, but with the very essence of light and darkness, where the fate of eternity itself hung in the balance? In this story, you'll uncover how a rebellion started with nothing but whispers in heaven, and how one angel, Lucifer, tried to tear the very fabric of existence apart. And I, Michael, was chosen to stop him. Do you ever feel torn between what is right and what is tempting? Between loyalty and pride? This battle may seem far away, but it echoes in every choice we make. Whose voice are you listening to? The voice of humility or the whisper of pride? Lego Bible Adventures proudly presents Michael versus Lucifer. I am called Michael, which means who is like God? Not a title of arrogance, but a question that anchors my being. I was created not to rule, but to serve, not to seek glory, but to defend it. Among the countless hosts of heaven, I was appointed as the commander of the angelic armies, a role not sought, but given. I did not rise through ambition. I stood firm through loyalty. In the early ages, before time breathed into the world, harmony reigned across the celestial realms. Light flowed freely, and the glory of the Almighty filled all things. In this eternal peace, there stood one who was beloved by all, Lucifer, the son of the morning. His beauty was unmatched, his voice like music that wrapped heaven in awe. He walked among the stones of fire, clothed in light. He was our brother. But over time, I began to sense a change in him. Small, subtle shifts in his tone, in his gaze, in the way he spoke of God. What once was reverence became reason. What once was praise became pride. He began to question not out of wonder, but out of defiance. While I stood in awe of the Creator's majesty, Lucifer began to wonder why he was not equal to it. And in the quiet spaces between eternity and pride, a rebellion was born. I watched him drift, and I knew a storm was coming. He was radiant. Lucifer, the morning star. Among the first of our kind, he was adorned in brilliance. His presence stirred awe in even the eldest of angels. His wings shimmered with hues no mortal eye could perceive. His voice could command legions or lull the heavens into peace. He moved with a grace that mirrored the art of the Creator himself. He began to question the order of heaven. He spoke of freedom, of potential, of destiny. He marveled at his own reflection in the sea of glass before God's throne. What once was praise in his voice became poetry laced with pride. He did not fall suddenly. No, he rose in his own mind, higher than what he was made to be. The spark of rebellion was lit in silence, behind closed veils of thought, where even angels could not see. But God saw. Lucifer's discontent grew until it was no longer hidden. He began to speak, to share his visions with others. Whispers in the courts of heaven. Questions asked not to understand, but to undermine.
Why must we serve endlessly? Why must we bow when we were made glorious?
He began to charm, to sway, to turn loyalty into doubt. And so the rebellion began, not with war, but with words. He had not yet drawn a sword, but already the harmony of heaven trembled. It could not be ignored. The murmurs grew louder. Angels who once sang together in perfect unity now spoke in hushed tones. Lucifer's words, like a hidden fire, had spread, and though he had not openly declared war, the order of heaven had been shaken. The thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers assembled. Cherubim with eyes like blazing wheels, seraphim with wings like rivers of flame. They all gathered before the throne. And at the center of that eternal court, the glory of the Almighty radiated, unshaken by the murmurs that echoed through the heavenly heights. Lucifer stood before us, not humbled, but bold. He spoke with elegance. He did not deny his ambition. He wrapped it in language of purpose and liberty. He questioned not the goodness of God, but the necessity of his absolute authority. Some listened. Some hesitated. I stepped forward. "Lucifer," I said, "you were created in splendor, but you forget you were created. There is no light in us apart from him. Bow your pride before it consumes you." He smiled.
You fear change, Michael. I do not.
He was warned, not once, but many times. The patience of the Most High was offered like a covering. But Lucifer no longer desired covering. He desired a crown. And as the council ended, I knew he had made his choice. The heavens held their breath. Judgment had not yet fallen, but it was near. It began like a fracture in glass, almost invisible at first, but soon it spread. One by one, angels of renown, those of strength, beauty, and voice, began to drift toward Lucifer's side. Not all were deceived by his lies. Some were drawn by admiration, others by the dream of power, and some simply followed the crowd. A third of heaven's host. That was the weight of his deception. Lucifer did not need war to divide us. His voice was his weapon. His charisma, a veil over his corruption. He spoke of a new order, where angels would be freed from servitude, where each would ascend to their potential. He promised thrones. He promised equality with the Almighty, and he delivered division. The harmony of eternity trembled. The once brilliant corridors of the celestial city echoed with tension. Even the songs of the seraphim faltered, as heaven mourned the loyalty being ripped apart. I saw friends, brothers, I had fought beside in ages past, now turn their backs on the throne. Their eyes, once filled with light, now shimmered with something colder. They looked at me not with love, but with suspicion. There was no longer one host in heaven. There were two. And for the first time in all eternity, heaven was no longer united. The sanctuary of perfection had been pierced, and the Creator, in his mercy, still waited, but not forever. The silence before the war was louder than any storm. Heaven stood divided. The throne remained unshaken, yet sorrow filled the air. The Almighty, in his omniscience, had permitted this moment, not out of weakness, but as a stage upon which justice and love would collide with pride and ambition. Then came the summons. From the highest heavens, the voice of God thundered, not in wrath, but in finality. His will was declared. No rebellion shall remain in my presence. The time for persuasion had passed. The time for judgment had come. And I, Michael, was chosen to lead. The order was etched in fire upon my spirit. Drive the darkness from heaven. I did not relish it. I did not thirst for battle, but I was the sword of divine justice. And when the word speaks, I obey. I stood before the faithful. seraphim lined in ranks of holy flame, cherubim bearing shields of light, hosts of radiant angels, their eyes steady, their hearts set. There was no fear, only reverence. For we did not fight for ourselves, we fought for the glory of the Most High. We clothed ourselves not in gold, but in righteousness. Our blades were forged from divine light, inscribed with truth. Each name of the faithful burned with sacred purpose. And then, across the divide, Lucifer stood. He was no longer the morning star. Darkness clung to him like smoke. His beauty had become terror. Behind him, his legions gathered, their wings like shadows, their armor blackened by rebellion. 2 armies, 2 kingdoms, 2 wills. Only one would remain. And so I raised my sword, not in hatred, but in holy resolve. The decision had been made. Heaven would be cleansed. Then it came, the moment when eternity held its breath and heaven became a battlefield. It began not with shouts, but with silence. A stillness deeper than time itself. Then, from Lucifer's ranks, a cry pierced the celestial realm. A war cry twisted with pride and rage. His legions surged forward like a wave of darkness, wings cutting through holy air, blades screaming with unholy energy. I gave the command, and heaven roared. Our armies met them with the force of divine justice. The clash was not like earthly war. There was no blood, no broken bone. This was a war of will, of truth against deceit, of light against shadow. Every strike echoed with power. Every movement pulsed with righteousness or rebellion. Lucifer descended into the heart of the conflict, his wings spread wide, eyes burning like twin stars collapsing. Around him, fallen angels fought with corrupted brilliance, still powerful but hollow. They had traded glory for illusion. I met him, face to face. He smiled, cold, cruel. His blade shimmered with a darkness that consumed light itself.
You could have stood with me, Michael,
he said, voice wrapped in venom.
Together, we could have ruled.
There is only one worthy to rule, I replied. We clashed. Our swords struck with force enough to shake dimensions. Sparks of eternal fire burst around us. The battlefield blurred as angels fought above, below, beyond comprehension. Thrones fell. Realms shook. This was not a skirmish. It was a storm. And though heaven itself quaked, the throne remained unmoved. The war had begun, but the end had already been written. Never had heaven seen such fury. The sky above the battlefield rippled like a living tapestry, torn by the clash of forces beyond mortal comprehension. This was not merely a war of weapons. It was a collision of essence, of what we were and what we chose to become. Lucifer fought like a tempest unchained. He wielded powers stolen and corrupted light twisted into shadow, wisdom turned into deceit. He summoned illusions that bent perception, opened rifts in the firmament, conjured false stars to rain confusion upon the loyal host. He moved with rage, not reason. But I, Michael, fought not in my own strength. I called upon the name of the Most High, and with every strike, I invoked the authority of His word. My sword was not mine, it was a vessel of divine will. When I spoke, heaven answered. When I struck, truth ignited. Around us, angels unleashed glories long reserved. Seraphim sang with voices that split shadow. Cherubim guarded the throne with shields woven of eternity. Divine beings poured out holy fire, driving back the blackened tide. And yet, Lucifer pressed on.
See what I can do,
he cried, flinging stars like stones.
I am power. I am destiny. No,
I said, blocking his blow.
You are pride.
With every moment, it became clear. His strength was immense, but it was not infinite. It was borrowed, perverted, dying. Mine came from the source, and it never faded. The war was more than a battle of force, it was a war of meaning. And now, the heavens were reaching their breaking point. The climax was near. The final clash awaited. It all came to a single moment. Time in heaven does not flow as it does on earth. But if it did, I would tell you the skies had bled centuries of battle. Realms that once knew only peace now echoed with the clash of divine purpose and fallen ambition. The battlefield was unrecognizable. Shattered realms, flaming winds, broken songs of the once faithful twisted by rebellion. And in the heart of that cosmic chaos, we met once more. Lucifer, the Lightbringer, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the radiance of the morning star. His wings, once white and flowing, now smoked with decay. His eyes, once clear and filled with wonder, burned with a desperate fury. He hovered above the abyss his pride had carved, a crown of lies upon his brow, gripping a blade pulsing with corruption. I did not speak. There was nothing left to say. He charged. His speed was blinding, his power immense. Each strike of his blade tore the air itself, opening wounds in the fabric of heaven. He screamed,
"This is my realm. I will not kneel."
I parried, struck, stood firm. My sword glowed, not from my strength, but from the authority of the one who sent me. It moved with purpose, not rage. My heart was not filled with hatred, only resolve. "You were given beauty," I said, catching his blade mid-air, "and you turned it into poison." His scream was raw, primal. With a burst of force, he broke free and soared into the sky, gathering energy around him like a blackened sun. I saw it then. His final assault, the sum of all his rebellion, forming into a storm of uncreation, and I raised my sword. I called out, not to the stars, but to the name above all names. The heavens echoed with one word, holy, ancient, absolute, Yapachobya. In that moment, power surged through me, not fire, not lightning, but truth. A pure, consuming light erupted from my blade, meeting the storm head-on. It did not clash, it consumed. Lucifer's power unraveled, his illusions shattered like glass in a hurricane. He screamed, not in pain, but in denial. His pride refused to bow even as the light surrounded him, stripping him of stolen glory.
"I am not done,"
he cried. "You were done the moment you rebelled," I said. With one final cry, I struck. The light of the Most High flowed through my sword and pierced the heavens. Lucifer fell. He fell not through space, but through eternity. Cast from the heights of heaven, his name no longer sung, but mourned. His wings were torn from the light. His followers, the 1/3 who stood with him, were swept away, cast down in a storm of righteous judgment. And then, silence. The battlefield was still. Heaven itself seemed to sigh in relief. What once trembled now stood firm. I did not lift my arms in victory. I fell to my knees, not out of exhaustion, but reverence. This was not my triumph. It was the will of the Almighty fulfilled. Angels gathered around me, wounded but faithful. The throne still shone, untouched by the rebellion. The Eternal One had not needed to lift a finger. His word was enough. And in that moment, all of heaven remembered. There is no throne higher, no light brighter, no one like our God. The battle was over. but heaven would never forget. In the wake of the war, the air itself seemed different, cleaner, stiller, solemn. The wounds inflicted on our realms would heal, but the memory would linger. The halls once filled with the laughter and praise of our brothers now echoed with an emptiness where their voices used to be. Not all victory feels like joy. I walked through the battlegrounds in silence. There on the sea of glass before the throne, I laid down my sword, not in weariness, but in submission. I had wielded it as a servant, never as a king, for I knew what Lucifer had forgotten. Glory belongs only to the one who gives it. The Almighty sat upon his throne unmoved, yet his presence filled all things with peace. He had allowed the rebellion not because he was weak, but because his justice must be perfect. His mercy, even toward Lucifer, had been long and deep. But mercy rejected leads to judgment. The fallen were cast out, not destroyed, for their final end had not yet come. They were sent to the lower realms, a prison of darkness, awaiting a time appointed. And Earth would become the next battleground, where humanity would face the same ancient voice that once deceived angels. We returned to our posts, those of us who remained, watchers, guardians, messengers. I stood once more at the gates of glory, not as a victor basking in conquest, but as a soldier forever reminded. Pride is the root of every fall, and obedience is the highest form of love. Heaven was whole again, but the war had only changed its battlefield, and I would be ready. The story of Michael and Lucifer is more than a tale of celestial war. It's a mirror held up to every soul. Pride or obedience, light or darkness. Each of us faces that same eternal choice. Lucifer fell because he forgot his place. Michael stood because he remembered his purpose. Now, I ask you, whose voice are you listening to? The one that whispers self-exaltation, or the one that calls you to humility and truth? If this story stirred something in you, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts on the spiritual battles we face every day. Have you ever felt caught between loyalty and temptation? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more biblical epics and spiritual deep dives like this. Every week, we bring ancient truths to life. And stay tuned, because next time, we descend to Earth. Lucifer's war isn't over. It just moved to our world.